the biggest tech giant in the world, Elon Musk. How did you get him on your podcast channel?
He slid into my DMs. No one's above anyone. People don't have inherent right to be arrogant and prideful. If I die and 1 million people are like, hey, that guy made my life better, I'll die happy.
The UAE is going to open up to gambling.
Opening up gambling, I'm a little bit skeptical maybe. I'm hyper bullish on Bitcoin. 3 to 4% of the world's population owns any Bitcoin. Good salary was £4,000 a year as recently as the 70s.
Bitcoin is like buying a property in the 1940s.
Question is, what's $1 million going to be worth? You want to drop $1 million on the latest meme coin? I wish you luck. My greatest concern.
Hello and welcome to Bet Talks, powered to you by 0x Processing. I'm Rick Godds and I'm joined by a very special guest. He is an entrepreneur, a public figure. He's a musician, author. He's a coach, a host of his own podcast channel with over 2 million followers all over his whole platforms. Let's welcome Real Talks with Zuby.
How's it going, Rick?
Welcome to Bet Talks.
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for the invitation.
It's been a while. We've been planning to get this meeting together, and it's a pleasure having you here. How's 2025 treating you?
So far, so good, man.
Yeah.
Blessed and highly favored.
Of course.
Can't complain. I generally try not to complain about my life. I don't have much right to do that as far as I'm concerned. But things are good, on the up and up.
Absolutely. Always positive. I love that. Newbie as such to Dubai.
Somewhat.
How are you finding it bedding in this sort of new transition?
It's good, man. I mean, I grew up in the Middle East in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And I first came to Dubai probably about 25 years ago, just on a visit. So the city has definitely changed since then. I'm happy to be here. I mean, I've been visiting for the past several years. I have a sister who's actually lived in the city for 10 years now. So I've been coming to visit her anyway prior to becoming a resident.
Yeah.
And the city is treating me well. I've made some good friends here, continuing to do so. I'm at that stage where I'm comfortable, but it's also still very new and there's a lot to discover and explore. So it's exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, and what a bio you have. I mean, is there anything you don't do?
Snowboard.
Snowboard in the desert. I mean, you have so much happening. You've built such a unique sort of career so far, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Varying from musician, rapper, to author, public figure. Obviously, your podcast is going through the roof. What is your actual? What would you actually label yourself as?
I'd say if I were to sum it up, a creative entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And perhaps a communicator.
Sure.
I mean, if you look at the through line through all the different things that I do, it's actually doing the same thing through a range of different mediums and platforms. Yeah. So I started out just being a rapper when I was 19 years old, and I put out my first release when I was still in university. And my goal back then was to positively inspire, impact, and uplift millions of people through my words. And that is still the main life mission. It's expanded, so that also now includes being an author and writing books. It includes all the aspects of social media. It includes podcasting, both appearing on shows like this and hosting hundreds of episodes so far of my own one. It extends to public speaking. So all of them are just different means of communicating. And the message across everything that I do at the core is fundamentally the same. It doesn't matter whether I'm rhyming or I'm just talking or I'm on a stage or I'm on the internet or I'm just in the real world. It's the same thing throughout. So to someone looking at it, it might look really disparate. Like, how's this guy doing all of these different things? How are these things connected to each other?
Correct.
But as far as I'm concerned, it's highly connected. It's the same thing, and you can reach different people through different media. When I was only doing music, I was somewhat limiting myself in a way, because not everyone's a hip hop or a rap fan. So sure, I can reach people who are into that, who like the type of music that I put out there. But then there are whole entire other demographics who could benefit from my message in some way, shape, or form, who were not hearing me.
Sure.
And now I can reach those people as well. So there have been a lot of interesting shifts in terms of even my own audience. So, I mean, if I think back to about 10 years ago, I'd say like 90% of my audience would have been people aged between, let's say, like 14 and 25, almost all in the UK, who happen to like hip hop and the music that I do. Whereas now I'd say half my audience is younger than me, Half my audience is older than me.
Yeah.
Some of them know me from the music stuff. Some know me because they've heard and seen my interviews.
You're diversifying
Some
that-
it's from
that
social
portfolio.
media. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so initially when that shift started to happen, it was a little bit weird because I wanted everyone to come through the front door of the music. I was like, I'm a rapper. That's what I do. I've been doing this for over a decade. That's what I want people to know me for. And I shifted my perspective on that. And it's like, I don't care what door people come through now, as long as they come into the house. And it's like a buffet, come take what you want.
Yeah.
I don't care if someone, if someone sends me a message and is like, I've never heard your music, but like, I love you and your message and what you stand for. There would have been a time where that would kind of, irritated me because I'd be like, oh, well, I'm an artist. Like, you should know my music.
Of course.
And now I'm just like, oh, you know what? That's fine. That's cool. Cool. You heard me on Rogan. You heard me on Fox News. You heard me on Ben Shapiro. You saw one of my tweets that went viral.
Yeah.
Great. If that's what you know me for and you found something positive that you could integrate in your life from it, I'm happy.
Incredible, incredible. So let's just look at actually the musician side of things. Now, you've released 3 albums, correct?
9.
9 albums in
6
total.
albums, 3 EPs.
Three EPs, okay. So 9 albums in total. I mean, that's incredible to what you've done. And now, obviously, you're writing books. The podcast has gone through the roof. What is the actual main focus? Because how do you possibly manage all of this?
The focus in terms of how I do things, it shifts day to day, week to week, month to month, and even year to year. So I try to put out one sort of one primary creative product or project, let's say every 1.5 years or so. That might be a new album. It might be a new book. It could be some other type of project in the future. But that's typically how I do it. So I have days and even weeks sometimes where it's just like, all right, this week is podcast week.
Yeah.
And I have weeks where it's, I'll do 10 podcasts in a single week. And then I can have a month where I do where I record no new podcasts, but I'm just totally focused on working on my book, for example.
Incredible, yeah.
Or I've got live events coming up and my focus is 100% on doing the best thing that I can on stage and then being sociable and mingling and taking the selfies and all that kind of stuff. So it switches a lot. I've gotten pretty good at kind of shifting the gears between whatever it is that I need to focus on. And I don't try to do them all, quite literally at the same time. So I'm not going to be working on an album and a book and doing tons of podcasts and doing live events like all at once. It doesn't really work. But I just kind of shift gears towards whatever I think needs to take priority.
Of course, yeah. Time management, obviously, is very key.
Yeah.
Well, here at Bet Talks, we discuss everything from gaming / gambling, crypto, blockchain, everything emerging tech, mainly within the UAE. And talking of emerging tech, I mean, last year you did interview the biggest tech giant in the world, Elon Musk, correct?
Yeah. 2023.
2023.
Yeah.
Okay, so nearly two years now.
Yeah, approaching.
I mean, that's an incredible achievement. I mean, how did that all become about? How did you get him on your podcast channel? Let's get to the point.
I asked him.
Yeah?
I asked him. Yeah, he slid into my DMs and we were chatting and I said, hey, I've got a podcast. It's called Real Talk with Zuby. I'd love to have you on it sometime. And he just said, sure. And then it was just a matter of logistics and getting a date and a time and a place. And I ended up going to San Francisco and recording at Twitter headquarters at the time. That's now X, and I think they're probably moving it to Texas, I believe.
Yeah.
But it was Twitter HQ. Not long after he had taken it over, so I think we're in a new era compared to even when I did that interview. If I go back and listen to it and see what we were talking about,
And what's happened in that last 2 years?
Yeah, quite a lot has happened.
Yeah. Incredible. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that.
Yeah, it's hard to top that guest. Yeah. I feel like my podcast kind of peaked, so I don't know where I go from here.
Yeah, it doesn't really get much bigger
try to
than
get
that.
Trump.
So now, obviously, you being in front of people like this and them agreeing to this kind of level. This has expanded your career.
Yes.
Obviously, everyone wants to be around you. Everyone wants to find out what it is. Did you actually learn from that interview?
I'd say what I predominantly learned from the interview was less from anything that was said directly, and it was more about demeanor and the things around it. One of the things I noticed when I met Elon was he was just as excited to meet me as I was to meet him.
Incredible.
Which was pretty cool. I mean, we'd had a lot of interactions over the past year.
Okay.
Online. We DM'd back and forth a lot. He was actually my very first paid subscriber on Twitter.
Okay.
And he replies to my stuff almost daily.
Yep.
So there's some interaction that's going on there. And so when I met him, obviously I was, to use the British term, kind of gassed, right? Of like, whoa, crap, I'm going to meet like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And there was a 2-hour delay between us setting up and him coming out of his meeting to do the podcast. We didn't start recording until about 9:30 p.m. in fact. Wow. So it was a late one. We were supposed to start closer to 7:00. So I was just kind of there with, producers and camera guys and everything set up, kind of waiting for him to come into the room. And he was so down to earth and humble and friendly. Incredible. And amiable. And just like myself, just like yourself, he's a person.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I think as human beings, we tend to sort of magnify and pedestalize people, and people can even become idols in a sort of way. And you can see how that happens, especially when someone has a huge amount of fame or wealth or celebrity or all of these things combined in the sense of Elon. There's a lot of things to admire about him. But ultimately, despite all of his successes and immense wealth and all of these things, he's a person. He's a human being. He's got the same wants, needs, and desires as...
I do think his brain works a little bit different, though.
It does.
He pauses when he speaks.
Sure, it does. Yeah, he's a genius.
Yeah, he's a genius.
He's a genius, and his brain obviously is not a typical average brain, and that's very admirable. But I'd say the biggest thing I sort of took away, and I already know this, so it's more of a reinforcement of just like, no one's above anyone.
Correct.
And people don't have like a sort of inherent right to be arrogant and prideful. Okay, if the wealthiest man in the world, who's worth $400 billion or whatever it is, and is running simultaneously Tesla and X and the Boring Company and Neuralink and SpaceX and doing any of these, being the CEO of one of these things would be hugely impressive. And he's just kind of doing them all. Oh, and he's got 11 children who I don't even know. I don't know. And he's got time to play Diablo and post memes on Twitter. I don't really get how he's doing all this, right?
Of course.
So if there were a man on this earth who had like a right, quote unquote, to be cocky and arrogant and be like, I'm better than everyone, I'd say it would probably be him. And he's not like that.
No.
So whatever right, so what reason would anyone else with their minor comparative level of success have to be like that? So I think that's something that was kind of drilled into me further. Yeah. I've already known this throughout my life. And then I'd say beyond that, you can always think bigger. One thing that's interesting speaking to Elon or just listening to him talk is the guy thinks on just the gigantic level. Right? When I'm thinking and I'm planning and I have my mission statement and I'm thinking of what I want to achieve, it's all based here on Earth. Yeah. Right? Like I'm big on Earth. Like he thinks interplanetary. Yeah,
of course.
Right? So most of us, when we're thinking about human beings and what we want to do, most people are quite fixed on their locality. Of course. Or maybe their nation, maybe the Earth. He's just like,
excessive,
it's interplanetary. It's just like you're talking to someone who isn't just like, going to Mars would be a cool idea. He's like, we're going to go to Mars.
We're going to go to Mars.
It's going to happen. We're going to be an interplanetary species. We're not just going to be here on Earth. We're going to have these colonies all over. And
I think very similar mindset to Branson as well. Richard Branson was very extremist like that.
Sure.
Just from my opinion.
Okay.
But listen, amazing having him. I mean, like you say, you've peaked at your career on your podcast. I don't know how you can sort of max that.
I haven't actually peaked, but...
So it's not about this. This is not about Elon Musk. I mean, it's incredible on what he is. The guy is a phenomenal genius. This is about you, and I want to know more about Zuby, and what you've done so far is incredible. What do we expect to see by the end of 2025 from Zuby? What's next to come?
I'd rather put the timeline out a little bit further. I mean, I already do pretty much all of the things that I want to be doing.
Yeah.
And I just want to do them all bigger and better and continue to inspire, reach, and impact more people. Like I said, the mission honestly has not changed in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
It's been the same. It's grown and it's evolved in certain ways, and I've hit certain milestones. So I used to say I want to positively impact 1 million people. That is my goal. If I die and 1 million people are like, hey, that guy made my life better in some way, shape, or form, then I'll die happy. And I think I can confidently say that I've done that now.
Yeah, for sure.
Just on X alone, I have more followers than that.
Yeah.
And I assume that most of them get some type of value from it. And, you know, I don't know how many dozens or millions of views and podcast downloads and all that kind of stuff. So I've certainly impacted millions of people. And to me, there's no ceiling on that. Yep. I think that with the God-given talents and personality and mentality and experiences that I've been given, the best way that I can serve in this world is to do my best to better humanity. And that's really what it is. It's,
yeah.
I don't mean this in the, this might sound, it's actually, in fact, it's the opposite of grandiose. It might sound grandiose to someone, but it's the opposite of grandiose. Like I view myself as like a servant of God, a servant of Christ. Like
wow.
My mission is to use what I've been given to uplift and better humanity. So that's all it is. It's not a prideful thing. It's just like, hey, I've got the ability to do this. If I can be a light in the darkness to people, which I know I can be and I have been, then cool, keep going with that. And I can't totally predict what that's going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I'm still a young man. I'd like to think, and when I look at a lot of the people who I greatly admire and who I do think are doing a great job of this, a lot of them are in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s.
Correct, yeah.
So hopefully I'm still at the very early stages, Lord willing, of it all. And through my 40s, through my 50s, through my 60s, as long as I can, and I'm able to, I can continue to make more books, make more music, do more interviews, give more speeches, travel the earth more, meet more people, shake more hands, kiss more babies, and yeah, you know, if I died tomorrow, I'd be happy with what I've accomplished already.
Nice, very powerful words. Very powerful words. Now, let's look back at how it all started, because you have got a mixture of a lot of different things happening here. So, family originally from Nigeria.
That's right.
But actually born in the UK. Went to school in the US.
No. I've never been to school in the U.S. I've never lived in the U.S. Yeah.
Okay.
I went to an American school in Saudi Arabia.
In Saudi Arabia,
yeah,
sorry.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I was, my dad actually used to work for Aramco, a very big company. I'm sure a lot of people would have heard of. So I'm what's called an Aramco brat. So I grew up in the late 80s, 90s, 2000s. I was living in Saudi Arabia. Had friends just from all over the world, super diverse. And when I was 11, I went to boarding school. So I was in the American school system from kindergarten to 5th grade. So say 5 years old until 11.
Yeah.
Then when I was 11, I went to boarding school in the UK. And I was in school in England for 7 years, then university for another 3. But during that whole time, I was back and forth between Saudi Arabia and the UK multiple times a year.
Yeah. So you got a mixture of everything in there.
Yeah.
A mixture of everything.
So the accent confuses people.
Yeah, absolutely. What was growing up like in Saudi Arabia?
It was wonderful. It was wonderful from my perspective. I grew up in an expat community, which in lots of ways is quite similar to what the vibe is like here in Dubai, because obviously we're here in the United Arab Emirates, but Dubai is something like 90% foreigners, like 90% people from all over.
It was 80, maybe 90 now, expats,
yeah, but somewhere between 80 and
80
90.
90%, yeah.
Yeah, so just like here, you had people from all different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So from when I was very young, as soon as my earliest memories begin, I've always been surrounded by everyone, different ethnicities, nationalities, religious backgrounds, just all types of people. And that's kind of just always been my norm. I would imagine if a child were to grow up here in Dubai, it would be quite similar, right? Just by the time they're 5 or 6 years old, they already have friends from all over the world. So for me, it was very much like that. It was a small place where I lived. There were maybe about 2,000 people in total, a few hundred families. Everyone knew everyone. There's one school. There's one shop.
Yes.
If you want to do anything interesting, you've got to get in a car, get on a bus, and go 2 hours into the city.
And you was in the compounds, yeah?
Yeah, that's where I grew up. So I can only speak, of course, from what it was like to grow up there for me. I sometimes have people wanting me to kind of like speak for every single person ever who grows up in Saudi Arabia. And I'm like, well, I can't do that for, I can tell you what my experience was like,
of course,
and what it was like for my friends and people around me. But I can't speak for what it's like for everyone. Yeah. Just like you couldn't with any other nation. I mean, if someone's like, oh, what's it like to grow up in the UK? It's like, well, it's a bit of a broad question.
Yeah.
where for whom. Like,
I think comparison the UK, the US to growing up in the Middle East alone is completely different though. Especially before, let's say you're an 80s child, I'm an 80s child, right? So growing up in the 90s in Saudi Arabia is completely different to what it is now.
sure.
Same as Dubai. I mean, Dubai 10, 15 years ago was a completely different place. Dubai now is changing so rapidly. It's a powerhouse becoming a powerhouse of the world.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've been coming to Dubai for the last 10 years. You must have seen changes yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's grown, more people, more development, more traffic, more businesses, more entrepreneurship. There's a lot that's flowing into Dubai, and it makes sense. We're here for a reason. We've all voluntarily chosen to be here and to leave our home countries and to be here for a reason. And that aspect in itself, I think, is part of what drives Dubai to be what it is, because it's such a self-selected population in a way. Just by someone being here, whether they've come from the UK or Canada or India or Malaysia, wherever they've come from, I feel like everyone here kind of has a story in a way, because there's that, well, how did you decide to come here? Because the typical British person does not decide to move and get out of Leeds or Manchester or London and go move to the United Arab Emirates. It's an anomaly in itself.
Correct. Yeah.
So I find you meet a lot of interesting people here, and they've got some type of story in that regard. And I think that plays into why it's so dynamic and a lot of the entrepreneurship, and there are so many go-getters. Everyone's really here to just really build a better life for themselves and their families if they have one. I think there's a higher level of sort of average focus than there is in most cities. Most cities in the world, or most places in the world, people just kind of happen to be born there, and they're there because it's just where they were born. That's kind of the truth for most places. The true norm,
people follow what their parents do, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
Each their own, but you get more of the entrepreneurial kind of people here in UAE. And I believe that Saudi is going that way, in my opinion, that it's now opened its doors up to a lot, such as sports. I mean, they're buying up everything.
That's a huge change.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been back to Saudi since 2008. Since my family left, so I'm really curious to actually go back. And I've heard so many things, but I haven't been back since it actually opened up. I think they started the tourist visas, 2018?
Sure.
So when I was growing up there, you couldn't even visit the country unless you lived there or had like a really close relative there or were going for some type of work project. They didn't issue tourist visas.
No.
And so now it's fascinating. When I was in the UK just a few weeks ago, and I'm seeing ads from this tourism board of Saudi Arabia
and company setups as well. Company incorporations.
It's mind blowing. I saw that Eminem performed there a couple months ago, and the concept of having like music festivals or these WWE wrestling events or sports events or whatever. Saudi Arabia becoming a hub for that. As someone who grew up there in a different time, it is pretty fascinating.
I think it's quite a bit a huge topic, especially in the sports industry. I'm a big golfer. Right?
Okay.
So not only did they set up the whole new Live Tour, they bought out the PGA as well. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that. I mean, like it's just mind blowing, and especially the boxing, what they're bringing to Saudi is just you for you growing up there, it must be like what has gone off here. Like it's completely flipped. So. I mean, looking at obviously change within the Middle East, you've grown up here. In the Middle East. You've been coming to Dubai for sort of 10 years to visit family. There is a lot of change in Dubai alone and the UAE. Now, let's look at the fact of come 2027, the UAE is going to open up to gambling in the UAE country, in a Muslim country. What's your thoughts on that?
Not that positive, if I'm being real. I get why they would do it. It's interesting. I definitely want this part of the world to maintain a lot of their conservative values. I kind of like countries to be what they are. Like, I don't want Saudi Arabia to be like Sweden. I don't want England to, I don't even want the UK and USA to be the same. I like the fact that even within the US, I like the fact that the states are pretty different. I think they should have different laws and they have different cultures.
Agreed,
And they
yeah.
have different things. So I think it's good for the Middle East, the GCC, to liberalize, for lack of a better term, to some extent, but not to go too far in the way that I think the West went too far.
Sure.
So opening up gambling, I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical, maybe. I don't know if it's going to be an overall net positive for, it probably will be for the economy, but
Sure.
there's more than the economy. So I don't know. I'd say I'm a little bit skeptical, but I don't know. That's my gut
Well, it is
feeling.
official. The win
Yeah.
is opening on Marjan Island
Okay.
in Ras Al Khaimah.
Yeah.
It's being developed as we speak. Ras Al Khaimah have a gaming license.
Yeah. Is it just that emirate to begin with?
Just
that has
that, that's
yeah.
actually confirmed official.
Got
right?
it.
They are building the win as we speak right now on a man-made island,
Sure.
Marjan Island, which is a mini palm, I call it. And they are going to be legalizing gambling in the UAE. How do you think local Emiratis will accept this?
I cannot speak for them. I would imagine there's probably quite a bit of contention there. Based on what I'd imagine a good chunk. I don't know if it's a majority, but I'd imagine a lot would share my skepticism, probably to a stronger degree, because gambling is against their religion.
Of course.
So
It's very haram.
Yes, exactly. So in the same way, if they were to announce that Saudi Arabia is legalizing alcohol, I wouldn't consider that a good thing.
But then
And that's not just because I don't drink.
alcohol was
because
illegal in the UAE and they legalized it.
I'm aware. I'm aware. And yeah, look, I don't run these countries.
No, of course.
So what they want to do and what directions they want to go in
course.
is mine. And I think the leaders here, I think, are probably smart enough and world aware enough to see what has happened and see what's going on in nations all across the world.
Sure.
And to try to strike that right balance between liberalism and conservatism and making changes and progress that are a net positive without losing hold of what makes their country their country.
Yep.
I think there's an important balance to strike there. I would say that virtually every Western country has tilted too far in one direction. And that's actually one of the reasons why a lot of people end up leaving the West and coming to places like this, because they actually want to be somewhere with some more traditional or conservative values. Sure, can it go too far in the other direction? Yeah, of course it can. But there's a balance that I think both individuals and countries, societies in general, I think sort of struggle with. It's a constant tension between. We have this within ourselves, even just as individuals, where there's that balance between discipline and freedom or autonomy. You have your desires and cravings and things your limbic system and your body, wants to do, right? You go to a buffet, like, from an animalistic perspective, you want to eat everything.
Yeah, sure.
Right? But from a discipline and a, prefrontal cortex perspective, you're like, no, I need to maintain discipline for my body, for my health. So we constantly have that tension. I think that's just the human experience. And I think that also extends to communities and it extends to nations as well. So we will see where it goes. I mean, overall, I'm hyper optimistic on this region.
Yep.
I'm optimistic on this century overall. Certainly this coming decade, there's a few things that do concern me for sure. But long term, I'm bullish on humanity.
Yeah, incredible. Good answer. Zero X processing are focused mainly on two things: acceptance rate and security, achieving an unprecedented level by combining blockchain infrastructure with broad account security measures. Zero X processing, a crypto payment gateway for your business. Dubai obviously is becoming this mega tech hub of the world, right? They're making footprints, okay? There's a lot of movement. Expats are piling in every year. Development is going through the roof. Infrastructure is, mind-blowing. What's your thoughts on cryptocurrency?
I'm hyper bullish on Bitcoin. The rest of it, meh. Bitcoin itself, I think Bitcoin is one of the most important inventions, certainly of my lifetime.
Wow.
And arguably of ever. last several centuries. I think that Bitcoin can do for, man, it goes beyond money. But I think certainly Bitcoin can do for money in the entire financial system what the internet has done for information. It has the potential to do that. It's simply a matter of adoption. As far as I know, right now, somewhere between 3 to 4% of the world's population owns any Bitcoin whatsoever.
Correct, yeah.
So for anyone who thinks that they're late or that it's already done what it's going to do, I don't think that's the case. Could there be a black swan event which sort of totally changes the game and the potential prediction and potential on this? Sure. But I think it is going, I think people massively underestimate just how much of an impact it's going to have over the next few decades. I can see a world where I'll tell you when I think it's totally won is when, you know how we know how we all use the internet and everyone knows what it is, but 99% of people probably don't really know what it is. It's just so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Everyone uses the internet. You don't need to even know what it is to use it.
Correct.
From a computer science perspective, very few people could explain how it actually works and what it is and where it is and how it's all connected. But I think Bitcoin will get to that level. So I think, kids who are 5 and under right now, by the time they're in their 20s even, but certainly 30s, 40s, I think such a Bitcoin standard will have been adopted that people will use
as a form of payment method, you're saying?
Yes, in terms of payments, in terms of saving, certainly. Because it's not going to just be, it starts with individuals.
Yeah.
We're already at the stage in 2025 where, El Salvador, so there's one country where Bitcoin already is legal tender, El Salvador. There are multiple countries that are mining it, stockpiling it, putting it into their reserves. Obviously, the ETFs opened up last year. So it's gone from, even in the 7 years that I've been interested in it, it's gone from being, in 2017, let alone prior to that time, these some handful of strange people on the internet and libertarians and internet cowboys and crypto punks who are like, we're super interested in all this stuff, to being a major conversation around nation states. President Trump spoke at the Bitcoin conference last year,
in Nashville,
and I think is speaking again this year. Eric Trump was obviously at the one Bitcoin
in Abu Dhabi. I was there,
in Abu Dhabi, and other nations in the Middle East, in the West, across the world, are speaking seriously about adding Bitcoin to their reserves in the same way they've had gold in their reserves for millennia. So, I think it's the best form of money that exists in terms of what money is actually supposed to do and supposed to be. All fiat currencies are, they're all junk. They're programmed to go to zero. Every fiat currency in history has trended towards zero, and they all do. It doesn't matter if it's the pound, the dollar, the euro, the Swiss franc. Those are literally the best ones that exist.
Sure.
And how much are they worth now compared to what they were worth 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago? My dad is a medical doctor. His annual salary when he first moved to the UK was £4,000 a year.
Wow.
So if you want to understand the scale of inflation, you think that you could feed a family. As a doctor, a good salary was £4,000 a year as recently as the 70s. And now, even if you were a doctor at that same level making 40,000, that wouldn't be enough. So people massively underestimate just how ravaging inflation is. It's almost taken for granted because people don't know any different, that your money is just going to lose purchasing power over time, because that's how it's been since going off of gold standards. That's all anyone really knows. It's just assumed. Yeah, a house now that costs £500,000, some years down the line it'll be 600,000, then it'll be 700,000, and our brains think, oh, the house is gaining in value. Really, no, your pound is losing value. Your dollar is losing value. Your euro is losing value. So Bitcoin flips all that on its head. It totally changes the game, and most people don't understand that. Even most people who have heard of Bitcoin, even probably most people who own it, don't really understand what they're holding. I think it's the equivalent. When you talk to older generations and they talk about buying houses for like £5,000 or £8,000 or $10,000 or whatever, and we're just like, oh my gosh, that sounds completely crazy. I think when people tell their children, let alone their grandchildren, a few decades from now, that they were able to buy Bitcoin for under under $1 million, let alone under 100,000, let alone under 10,000, let alone under 1,000 in their lifetime, their minds are going to be equally, if not more, blown.
Yeah. I do see social media pop-ups that Bitcoin is like buying a property in the 1940s.
Yeah, basically.
Same kind of thing.
Beachfront property.
Yeah.
In Manhattan,
Yeah.
which doesn't exist, but yeah.
No, I didn't know where there was a beach in Manhattan, but maybe a little stream through Central Park, yeah? Where do you see the price of Bitcoin in the next 10 years?
10 years, I would certainly say over $1 million within the next 12.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't normally do like public price predictions, but I think it's essentially mathematically
Well, there you go. You've
programmed.
heard it first at Bet Talk. Zuby.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll say that. I'd say within 12 years.
12 years.
Within 12 years, I see it over $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah. Question is, what's $1 million going to be worth?
Inflation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you are bullish on Bitcoin. You're a believer in Bitcoin. So you're telling me that the rest of it you don't believe in. You don't believe in meme tokens. What these altcoins? What's your actual thoughts on the rest of the market?
Sure.
Because it's a big market out there.
Yeah, it's gigantic. I mean, I believe they exist. Belief is a bit of a strange word. Do I think that they are world-changing technologies? No. Do I think that a small minority of people can flip money on them and turn their £100 into £500 or $1,000 into $10,000? Yeah, obviously, that's happening every single day.
And that's community-based building. It's creating a hype. Right?
Yeah, but even if I look back to if I look at the crypto market, if I look at the crypto top 100 in 2017 compared to now, or perhaps even 2020 compared to now, besides Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and maybe 10 others, like it's totally changed. The other 90% has gone and new things have come in. And 5 years from now, if I were to predict it, Bitcoin will still be number one. ETH will probably still be number two. That one's more debatable. Maybe it'll be Solana or USDT.
If you look at Ethereum, there's actually a use case.
Sure.
Because the Ethereum network, everything obviously is...
Look, if I were to summarize it, I'd say Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the king. In the same way that there are lots of different metals. It's lots of different metals, but for the millennia, gold is gold. And there are arguments that aluminium is better than gold, or platinum is better than gold, or silver is better than, like, in certain qualities, they are better. But gold is just gold. It's the standard, right? So I see Bitcoin just being the immovable king. I don't think anything is supplanting that ever in terms of cryptocurrency. I don't even think it's close. I think it's light years ahead of the others. And then I think there are perhaps a handful of other blockchains that will have some use case, whether that's for smart contracts, it's for gaming, or it's for tokenizing real world assets, that kind of thing. I think a lot of that stuff will eventually move to Bitcoin. But I think, this is where I call myself like a Bitcoin maximal-ish, right? Because Bitcoin maximalists are probably getting mad at me right now for even acknowledging that other blockchains exist. And then people who are like full-on degen crypto gamblers are mad at me for being so bullish on Bitcoin and poo-pooing their coins. But I think against Bitcoin, everything loses. Like if you measure stuff against dollars, it looks like the market is going up. Bitcoin's eating everything. Bitcoin, one ETH, like even if we're just talking price, one ETH used to be 0.1 Bitcoin. So even just from a pure investment perspective, one ETH, it used to be 10 ETH to one Bitcoin.
Sure.
Right now, it's about 30 ETH to one Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin is actually what you denominate in, everything else gets destroyed by it. So if you want to increase your dollar stack or your pound stack, your fiat stack, then from an investment perspective, sure, you can chase, altcoins, meme coins, all that stuff. But if you actually measure in Bitcoin, you'll see that long term, none of them even hold a candle to it, even as an investment, even if someone's just looking to increase their money stack.
Sure.
So, yeah. Look, I'm pro freedom, so there's already tens of thousands of cryptocurrencies, and there's going to probably end up being hundreds of thousands in meme coins and all that. But I wouldn't recommend hodling any of them except Bitcoin.
So you don't invest in dog with hat then?
No, I don't. No. If someone wants, look, some people get super passionate about it and like get really angry. Like I know people who would like want to fight you for even suggesting that, right? Like I know some hardcore toxic Bitcoin maxis, and I get them. But I'm also kind of like, look, we're all supposed to be pro freedom here. So if people want to do their gambling, I generally don't really get emotional about how other people choose to spend their money. So I might think that there's a lot of things that I think are silly ways to spend money. Like I don't get it, quote unquote. But I'm sure there's ways that I can spend money and someone else is like, I don't get that.
I don't get that yet.
And I don't care if it's your money and you've earned it. Then
spend it on what you want.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You want to buy yourself a $1 million watch? Cool. I'm glad you're able to do that.
Of course.
You want to drop $1 million on, the latest meme coin? I wish you luck.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. Yeah, I wish you luck. Like if you were to put $1 million in the crypto market, I'd be like, just put it straight into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And hold it for a very long time. That's what I would recommend. But I'm not a financial advisor, and also people can do what they want. But I'm very, very hyper bullish on Bitcoin. The rest of it, people can have fun with it, and it's good that maybe there's ways for young people in particular to make some money and have some fun in a way that is, I would just sort of treat it like gambling.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, right. I'd essentially say the rest of it is.
This is what I say. I do ask this question regular to a lot of our guests here at Bet Talks. Is crypto gambling? And a lot of people will say, yes, it is.
Bitcoin, no. Crypto, yes.
Especially meme coins. They are a gamble.
Yes, there's even levels, right? Even within the altcoin market.
Yeah.
Ethereum is not equal to, even Doge is not equivalent to, I don't know, whatever thing popped up last week.
Of course.
Right? Because at least it has some multi-year history as a meme coin.
Yep.
Do I think it's comparable to Bitcoin? No, absolutely not. I mean, the supply is infinite. Anything with an infinite supply or a centralized supply or a team and all that, it's not. Yeah, it can't compare. Which is why Bitcoin can't be. I don't even think it can be recreated. I don't even think a competitor could be made that exists at this point.
Yeah.
That meets the same. That has the same traits that Bitcoin does.
Do you believe they will regulate BTC?
I mean, they already are to different degrees.
Still an unregulated market.
Yeah, I mean, different nations have and are coming up with their own things and ideas. Some people think regulation is good because it provides clarity, and it allows the market to open up to more people, including more traditional investors, both at the retail level and the institutional level. Other people just kind of want it to remain totally the Wild West. I don't personally have a strong opinion. I don't know what's better long term. But again, I compare Bitcoin to the internet quite a lot. And I think people can try things and they can, I remember a few years ago when China tried to ban Bitcoin outright and failed completely. I mean, Putin last year during one of his speeches said that, you can't ban Bitcoin. And if Vladimir Putin is saying that, if a world leader could have a decent shot at it, you'd say, he and Xi Jinping would be up there in terms of potentially being able to do it. And there was no, we can't even do that.
Well, there's theories that Putin invented Bitcoin.
I haven't actually heard that one.
Yeah?
That would be fun.
Yeah.
So he's Satoshi.
But this is the thing. I mean, it's still a very unregulated market.
Yeah.
Who actually owns Bitcoin? This is the big question.
The holders.
It's a holder, community-based holders,
Yeah.
correct? But there's no actually company incorporation.
No,
There's no C-level team.
That's
You know what I mean?
That's the point.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that sold me on it. I was just like, oh, wait, there's no central bank or government or the same thing that scares some people away from it.
But completely different to looking at Ethereum.
Yeah.
You actually know the owners, the founders. There's actually a usability case around it. In my opinion, I think Ethereum is the biggest cryptocurrency in the world.
But it's not.
In usability.
Okay.
You see my point?
Yeah.
You see my point? Every token is pretty much used on the Ethereum network. So for usability...
Except Bitcoin.
Except Bitcoin.
There we go. The one that matters.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see your point. I just think in usability, in actual usability case. Yeah. But yeah, like I say...
The thing is, as well, I mean, Bitcoin is not meant to be everything, right? And this is maybe where I differ from the most hardcore Bitcoin maximalists, right, is that Bitcoin does what Bitcoin does extraordinarily well. So if you look at gold, gold has technological and manufacturing uses. But even if you looked at gold just as a form of money and a store of value, as far as physical items or materials are concerned, for literally thousands and thousands of years in multiple places across the world, they've decided gold is the best store of value. If we're going to make coins, we're going to have money, we're going to have currency, gold is the ultimate. There are many, many, many ridiculous number of situations where gold is not the best metal to use to do something, right? Our mics are not made of gold. No. Maybe they have some gold components in them, but they're not made of gold. Our smartphones are not made of gold. Most metal things are not made of gold. Like, it's incredibly heavy. It's incredibly expensive. There are many reasons why you'd use other metals for things. So I don't even think that, so it may well be the case that we know there are much faster blockchains than Bitcoin. It's not the fastest. It's not, it may not even be the easiest to use in some ways. It may not be the easiest to build on and create smart contracts. And if you want to do gaming or create NFTs or whatever it is, there are other options that do that a lot better. But in terms of being, if I look at it as a store of money, a form of money and a store of value, then as far as cryptos are concerned, there isn't any competition. I mean, even Ethereum itself, which is number 2 by market cap, what's its supply? What's its supply cap?
I'll tell you right now.
Well, you don't know because it doesn't have one.
Well, I mean, the supply of usage of Ethereum.
Yeah, but they can continue just issuing new ETH, right? There's no maximum.
Yeah, of course. There's no maximum. Oh, you mean, okay.
Yeah, there's
usability.
Yes, as everyone knows, there's 21 million Bitcoin.
21 million Bitcoin.
There's only ever going to be 21 million.
Yeah, the ETH is not capped. They can keep
exactly. Most of them are not. Yeah. And as you said, we know who the founder is, Vitalik Buterin.
Yeah.
There's a team around it. If they want to change something with Ethereum, they can change it. If they want to, and there are benefits to that.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're looking at it as a form of money or a store of value, that's a gigantic downside. The centralization, the fact that it's got unlimited supply, the fact that there's no guarantee in terms of programming that the issuance is not going to change. Sure. So just like, you go back to the same problem we have with fiat currency, right? It has inflation. Yeah. And we don't have total transparency of that. They're not like, okay, in 2025, we're issuing this many pounds in this many dollars.
So then
they can
ETH runs on the same perspective because they just keep printing cash.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same. It's the same with Doge. It's the same with like the vast majority of them.
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, Bitcoin is just separate from technically, yes, it is a cryptocurrency, and it's the first one. Everyone else got the idea from it, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just set apart. Yeah. It's not the same. That's why I tend to, even when I'm conversing with people and they talk about crypto or blockchain, I separate Bitcoin out from that. Because yes, it is a cryptocurrency, it is a blockchain, but if someone is just kind of viewing it all the same, then I don't think they get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like your theory. Very knowledgeable, very interesting, So cryptocurrency is just one topic that obviously we discuss. I want to touch on base on one more, which is emerging like crazy, especially in the UAE. Where do you see AI technology?
I don't know.
Are we going to see robots in the next 10 years walking around?
Probably. 10 years is quite a long time for things to happen and change. So, yeah, within 10 years. I mean, we already see the occasional one, right? I don't know how sophisticated they are.
Correct, yeah.
But,
you see them at conferences and stuff. Yeah. And shaking people's hands. And
see the driverless vehicles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's almost guaranteed that we're going to see more of that. How far will it be within 10 years? I think it's quite difficult to
Well, they're saying in the next 5 years we're going to start seeing drones in the UAE.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Taxi drones, you'll be using a mobile drone as a form of transport.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, AI there's so many dimensions to it. And it can go, I think, in so many different directions, both positive and negative, that, I mean, anything I say would just be just kind of random speculation. I've had this conversation with Elon, and he himself, he works in AI and works with it,
course.
and he shares many of my concerns.
What is the biggest concern you have of AI technology? Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay, my greatest concern, I think, if I could summarize it, it would be that we create a world where humanity exists to serve technology rather than the other way around. So if you think of every invention in human history, the point of a technology, the point of making something is to serve us, make our lives better in some way, shape, or form, right? Raise the state of humanity and make things better or easier, better for us in some way. And I worry with artificial intelligence that you could potentially reach a stage quicker than people might even imagine, potentially, where we've created a world and an economy where the purpose almost of the human beings comes into question. And when you talk to the most kind of like hardcore secularist pro AI people, they say a lot of things that really concern me, right? Like they'll talk about just this is the next phase of evolution, and it's totally fine if we, the AI becomes the supreme species and human beings become secondary. I'm like, what are you saying, dude? Like, do you kind of get? Do you actually know what you're saying here, right?
Yeah.
Do you want like we become subservient to
I think people
the
get
AI?
they get carried away.
Yeah, people can get carried away, but I guess because other technologies don't develop or replicate or improve themselves almost, right? Like you don't buy a car and then the car is like maintaining itself and fixing itself and improving. But with artificial intelligence, it can potentially, the whole point almost is for it to take on its own life and use machine learning to consistently be improving itself.
Yeah.
So what if you get to a stage where that is, I don't know, some people call it singularity or whatever it is, but it just gets to a point where it's like, wait, some people are like, yeah, we'll have a future and the AI and the robots or whatever they're doing all the jobs and they're running everything and so on. People even talk about having them in governments and making the decisions. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so what do humans do, right? Like we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history where we've kind of known what our meaning and purpose in the world is.
Sure.
And what exacerbates this for me is if you particularly look at developed countries, particularly in the West, which I know best, one of the biggest sort of concerns a lot of people have is around lack of meaning, lack of purpose, mental health. People are depressed, people are anxious, people are lonely, all of these things. People are disconnected from something very basic within the human body, soul, and spirit. And when I look at AI in the sort of dystopian version, it's like, okay, you're creating and pushing this technology that is potentially going to massively exacerbate that. So if there's already a crisis of meaning and purpose, and then you start supplanting people's jobs by the hundreds of millions or the billions, and you're suddenly in this world where it's like, wait, what am I doing here? What am I meant to be doing?
Of course, yeah.
Where does that go?
It's totally wiping out human society in that case.
As we know it.
Yeah.
Certainly as we know. And some people are like, oh, well, that's fine. Like, we'll just adapt and we'll have new jobs and we'll spend our time doing other things and find a meaning and purpose that way. And I'm like, well, I hope you're right.
Yeah.
Like I'm not being pessimistic here because these are sort of hopes or desires. I'm just kind of raising an alarm of like, hey, we might want to think about this before you, because even when people talk of just replacing people, say if you just take the aspect of replacing people's jobs, okay, if 10 years from now, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, it doesn't matter. If 20 years from now, half of people's jobs have been replaced and supplanted by some type of AI or robotics or combination, then what do those billions of people do? And when I say that, I don't just mean in terms of money. People are so obsessed with money. They think I'm just talking like money and finances because people are, this is why we need UBI. I mean, no, like your meaning, your purpose. Like we don't just work because work pays us. It's part of the meaning. It's part of the purpose. There's something we get as a man to man, right?
Yeah.
If you got paid exactly the same as you get paid or earn now from just sitting at your home, not doing anything, not doing any labor, and you just get deposited money into your account, that's not the same as you working and providing and being an asset to your community.
Agreed.
And needing to provide goods and services to help people.
Building growth.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah.
There's something, for lack of a better term, in our spirit.
Correct.
I'd say in our soul that wants to be a useful and productive member of society. And that doesn't have to come in the form of just labor for money.
Yeah.
But it's certainly for men in particular, it's a major part of it, which is why if a man just loses his job, if he gets fired, he's way more likely to fall into a depression or even attempt suicide than a woman is. Because men, for all of human history, in every society, every country, we derive a lot of our pride and value from the fact that, yes, we go to work and we provide, whether you have
we are a
wife,
man and,
children, society. You're used to be, hunting,
of course,
and gathering, and then farming, and then manufacturing and laboring. Now it tends to be more intellectual, but so much of our being is sort of derived from that. So I've said a lot, but if I were to sort of summarize it, I'm worried about the effect AI will have on sort of that aspect of it. I'm worried about we just create a society where people are just kind of listless.
Sure.
And, because sometimes people are, oh, well, there'll be more art and there'll be more creativity. I'm like, most people are not artists. Most people don't.
You're taking away people's purpose.
You're taking away the purpose. You're taking away the purpose.
Yeah.
And that in itself, yes. Yeah. Maybe just that as a one-line summary would be my greatest concern. It's not like the fun sci-fi of the robots rebel against us and we're fighting a war against the robots and they're firing their that could happen too.
Sure.
Right? It's not like the physical threat per se. It's more of a meaning and purpose and spirit level. That's what I worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zuby, it has been great having you on the show.
Thank you, man.
You are a very intelligent, very opinionated, and I've loved having you here. I think this podcast has been fantastic. I've got one last question before we wrap things up. With all your success of what you've done and what you've got coming up, what advice would you give to up-and-comers, especially in the media, in the media industry? I mean, you'd cover a lot of sort of industries, but you are a media guy at best, okay? Musician, public speaker, author, so it all comes under media. What advice would you give to up-and-comers coming into this industry?
I'll give two, and they may seem very disconnected, but look after your health. Get and stay in good physical health. Look after your body. You only get one of them. And see how you can help people. Don't focus on how can I make more money? How can I do this? How can I get this? How can I get that? Think, how can I serve more people? What do people need or want that I can contribute to? And if you do that and you do that at scale, then lo and behold, you'll find that long term you become successful anyway. Yeah. So those would be my two.
Incredible. Yeah. Incredible. Very inspiring. It's been a pleasure. On behalf of myself and Zuby here at Bet Talks, powered to you by 0x Processing. Check out the full podcast and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Pleasure.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
That was good.